When it's time to sit down and actually create your matter, just like it's a bad idea to sit down with no clue of what you're going to write about, once you actually have an idea, you still have to have a clue of what you're going to say about that thing. It's no good to have an idea, go to write it out, and face that blank page and realize you don't know which way you wanted to go with a piece. And that is where mind maps come in. Some of you might already be sold on mind mapping, but if you're like me, you might be resistant to the idea. And I'll tell you a little bit about my history. I never really got behind mind mapping. When I did it by hand, I would inevitably put something in one place and then decide that it should be somewhere else and be erasing and making a mess of the whole thing. So I didn't like that because I like things a little bit neat and orderly. And then I tried downloading one of those really expensive mind mapping softwares and did the free trial on it to see if it would work for me. But it was way too complicated for me to get the hang of, and I knew that I just really wouldn't use it to justify the expense. So if you're like me and you're not really into mind maps, don't shut this video down yet, because I do have some really good insights coming your way. So first, what is a mind map? It's just a way to take ideas and associate them together. You'll put an idea in the center of your page, and then you'll put sub-ideas, we call them branches, off of that main idea, and then those branches will have child branches, just like a tree. So let's get back to a concrete example. If you've got a tomato growing site, your mind map would be about, say, tomato growing. So you might have a main branch for planting seedlings, a branch for pest control, a branch for fertilizing or enhancing the soil, and then those branches would all have sub-branches. Like the planting seedlings branch might have littler branches coming off of it for different types of seeds, and water requirements for each of those, and the germination time for the seeds, and that sort of thing. For your whole website, each of those branches could become their own articles. So a mind map can help you organize your site as a whole and how you want to lay out the content that you'll present on your site to your visitors. Mind maps can also help you organize an individual article or a piece of content, and that's what we're going to focus on for the rest of this video. So let's get off the hypothetical tomato growing example, and we'll show you a real life example of mind mapping. Now what's coming up on screen here is the mind map that I created when I was putting together the content that you're getting here in Module 2. So if you look at the very top branch, it's covering the video on maintaining a list of post and topic ideas, and it's been developed out into several branches, and then those branches have sub-branches. Now because each topic nests under its head topic, when it is time to create, you never find yourself jumping around from point to point because you already have developed how you want the ideas to flow and in what order you want them to flow in your mind map. When you use a computer-based system for mind mapping like I did here, it's also really easy to manipulate the branches around and change the associations if you need to. So I could take the branch that says portability is key and move that down into the mind maps section if I decided that that was where that should be, which negates gets rid of the problem that I had with hand-drawn mind maps of putting things in a place and not really being able to change the association. So let's take a look at the mind maps branch. When I first thought of it, I had a tools section, or I had the tools section at the very top, and it was just the first thing that came to me. I said, if we're going to be talking about mind maps, we're going to have to talk about the tools that people can use to mind map. And as I developed it out further, I realized that, a video about mind mapping obviously shouldn't open with, hey, here are some tools, because some people want to know what mind mapping is, some people need to know how to do it, and why you would want to do it. So those branches came in later, but because I'm doing it on a computer system here, I was able to easily move the branches above the tools section so that the tools section came last. Now that I'm actually making this video, I can see exactly what topics I want to cover, what points I want to hit for each of the topics, and in what order I should cover it all in. So you'll want to have that, knowing what order everything is in, whether it is that you're doing video, audio, or writing, or whatever else. And you can consider your mind map as something of a roadmap for what you're about to create. But mind maps are important not just for organizing the matter, because typically when you start a new mind map, the ideas are going to flow out pretty quickly. That's great, and it's where you'll lay out the general framework for your content, the main points that you're going to want to hit. But it's when the ideas slow down and get a little bit harder to come by, when you're really like intellectually just reaching, that the good stuff comes out on your mind map. It's not something that you want to spend just 5 minutes on and call it good. As you're looking at your mind map and sitting with your mind map, your brain will start creating different associations and more will come to you. So expect that flow to stop from time to time. Sit with it. That's totally part of the process, and just keep going. So you know that mind maps help you come up with more ideas and associations for the content that you've decided to create. And you know that they help you organize all the points that you want to hit in a logical order so that you can hit the ground running when it's time for you to actually start the creation. So let's look at some of the tools that you could be using to create your mind maps. First, there's paper. Some people really just think better this way by putting pen to paper or pencil to paper, whatever the case may be. And if you're one of those kinds of people, then absolutely go for it. This mind map that you see here on screen didn't use a whole lot of color, but it suggested that you do use a lot of color when you're creating mind maps. They say that the color helps your brain create even more associations. So if you do want to do pen and paper and you do have some different colors, markers, colored pencils available to you, make use of it and make it pretty and make it fun. This next one here is iThoughtsHD. And this is the software that really turned me 180 degrees from being a mind map hater to really actually loving the technique. So this is an iPad app. It's $9.99. It's worth every penny. Most of the time during this course, throughout all of the modules, I'm going to show you 3 free versions of things and give you workarounds. So if you're on a budget, you can use those workarounds. But if you already have an iPad, I'm telling you to get this one. Get iThoughtsHD. Right now, it's actually that good. There's something about being able to touch and when you're on the iPad and get that tactile feel of being able to move things around with your finger and edit it and manipulate its parts on the iPad with iThoughtsHD that make all the difference in the world for me. It completely changed me from not caring so much for mind maps to really using them as a key tool in my business. The iThoughtsHD software is really simple. It's easy to use. You just tap and type and then you drag things if you want to rearrange them. So it's really intuitive. And for me, I'm not very artistic, I'm not really interested in drawing, and I also like things to be neat and orderly, so this is the perfect balance between things. Now, iThoughtsHD will also export the mind maps that it creates into different formats, from an image to an OPML file, and the OPML file bit is important, and we'll talk about why in a later video. Anyway, this is highly recommended. And then next, okay, I'm going to show you a free online mind mapping solution, and then we'll also draw out a little mind map so that you can get a feel for how the process works. This is MindMeister, and it's an online mind mapping tool. What's handy about it, other than the fact that it's free and it's online so you can access it anywhere, is that you can give other people access to your MindMeister mind map. There's a tongue twister. But you can collaborate with people together on a project with that. So we're going to log in first and create a new mind map based on, let's go with the tomato growing niche. So we're logging in and we want to create a new mind map. So we'll do that. There is my mind map. Now if we scroll over here to the right, you can see lots of different things for navigating your mind map, changing the text, changing the size, the style, the color, changing the icons and stuff like that. I'm not going to mess with those in this demonstration video. You can try those out if you'd like later on. But for the purposes of this video, we'll just go with the defaults. Now I want to change my mind map to what the main topic is about. So let's say it's tomato growing. And then we need a branch, right? So we can click add up here and that'll create a new branch for us. So Genesis, where do our tomatoes come from? And we need to create another branch from there. They can come from seeds, and I just hit enter twice and it created a second branch for me, or they can come from little sprouted plants that you can get like at Home Depot. So I'll write Home Depot sprouts. You could tell that this isn't a niche that I actually know really anything about. It was probably the worst thing I could ever pick to do a demonstration on, because I know that there's a better word for Home Depot sprouts. Okay, then we need, if we're going to plant them, once we've decided how we're going to get them, we need to plant them. And so we might do that indoors, and we might do that outdoors. And if we're going to plant them outdoors, we need to prep the soil. And to prep the soil, we need to get rid of rocks. And we need to put in stakes. We're going to need a weed barrier. Okay, and then back to indoors. We'll need lights if we're going to grow them inside, and then we'll also need pots for them to grow in, right? Okay, so we've found what we're going to grow, we've decided where we're going to plant it, and then we need to fertilize it. And to fertilize, T-I-L-I-Z-A-T-I-O-N, that looks better. To fertilize it, we're going to need, let's say Miracle-Gro. I know about that. But we might also want like an organic alternative. And this is something I'd need to investigate more, but perhaps manure. That's organic, right? And then we're going to need to, we're feeding our plants, we're planting our plants, we're going to need to water our tomatoes. And for that, we might set up an automatic system, like a drip system, or we might just do it, say, by hand. If we do it by hand, we're going to need a hose with a sprayer. So here's a really simple mind map. That's all you have to do to create one. If you're going to create more in-depth, lengthy kind of content, and if that kind of stuff has ever intimidated you, go ahead and give mind mapping a try. And don't just give it 5 minutes. This is a demo that I did for you, but if I were actually developing a site on this topic, I would obviously spend a lot more time filling this thing out completely. But really, really work it out. Sit down with your mind map for an hour, come back to it the next day with fresh eyes and see what new connections you can create at that point, and go on until you're completely exhausted, because that's one of the things that makes mind mapping so powerful, is that as you come back to it, as you take more time with it, and the initial ideas stop flowing, that's when the real creativity and the really interesting stuff comes up. So do take that time. Now, even if creating the long, in-depth sort of stuff hasn't intimidated you in the past, you'll still find that it's a lot faster to create your content when you've mind mapped it out in advance. And that's true for me as well. It's like kind of like once you do your mind map, you've worked out all of the kinks in advance. So when you sit down to actually ship your product, it all just flows out. It's fast and it's easy. And that's the way that we want it, right?